Today's guest truly embodies the word growth. Over the last 2 decades, Vineet Mehra has helped some of the biggest brands in the world grow, from Procter & Gamble to Johnson & Johnson, where he oversaw a $4 billion marketing budget. Today, he's the Chief Marketing and Growth Officer at Chime. In this conversation, we talk about the biggest career risk he ever took, his philosophy on leadership, and we get real tactical around the economics of growing a new brand, all through the lens of one of the most brilliant marketing and growth leaders. Let's get into it. Young founders, entrepreneurs who have products, how should they be thinking about the economics?
I like it. So we're really geeking out now. I like it.
Yeah.
When you can create a positive brand platform, you can really create a movement. Chime, 50% of our acquisitions come from organic growth. They don't come from paid growth.
Vineet, I am so excited to have this conversation with you today for quite a few reasons. You've had one of the most fascinating career trajectories as a marketing leader, now as a chief growth officer. For me, this conversation is so fascinating because we have founders and entrepreneurs, people that are building things, and marketing has come up as something that is a pretty big sore spot, a place of really wanting to understand more. How can I understand this? How can I master this? But also, how can I grow sustainably? And I think that you have some of that knowledge that is so valuable to this audience that's listening. So thank you for being here. This is going to be a great conversation.
I look forward to it. And also just congratulations on all your success. It's amazing to see the show take off the way it is. And most importantly, the people you're helping. It must be so rewarding to feel that and to experience that. I'm glad to be a part of it at Chime.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, no, you guys have been such champions of the entrepreneurs of the show, and we appreciate it so much. And it's a beautiful partnership. We're very, very grateful and excited about it. So, all right, let's start with your personal journey. I think you are a very decorated, a very celebrated marketing leader. And you have this incredible kind of career that everyone from the outside looks at. But I'd be really curious about the journey that it took to get here. What are some of the ups and the downs and the challenges to even get to this point?
Yeah, well, I think all of us to some degree are shaped by our childhood and how we grew up and where we came from. And, I'm no different. I'm sure you're no different. And a lot of it is luck. Some of it is, some good choices. And some of it is just, like I said, being at the right place at the right time. I grew up in a really simple way. I was born in India and first generation Indian kid. I grew up in Canada. I was pretty young when my family moved. I was still 6 or 7 years old. And it was quite an experience because we moved to a place where there were not a lot of people that looked like me.
Yeah.
My parents didn't really totally understand how to navigate the environment. And so I was kind of left to my own to figure things out. If this is a cliche, but it's true, if you're the son or a daughter of a first generation immigrant from India, what they know is a couple of things: become a doctor, become a lawyer, or become an engineer. And none of those things really suited me. And I actually got a little bit lucky. In grade 11, in my high school, we had this one teacher named Mr. Zuli, who I still remember to this day. And, I still give him back everything he gave me. And he ran a marketing class, which was really rare in high schools back then.
Super rare. And, I did not have that in my high school, I'll tell you.
Yeah, it was just random. This is luck, right? This is where luck plays into it. And he, even more lucky, was that he was actually an ex-Procter & Gamble kind of marketing guy that decided to become a teacher. And he saw I really took a liking to his course. I just naturally loved it. And he one day talked to me a little bit about P&G and told me, what this company is. I mean, my parents didn't even know what this was. I had no one guiding me. I had no mentors, nothing. And this one guy put this one company and this one career path on my radar. And, the rest is kind of history. I got obsessed with P&G. I read all these books. I read the history of the company. I then, when you go to choose university, that you apply to in Canada, I went and looked at the stats of where P&G hired from the most.
Wow.
And I just got obsessed. And I went to the school called Wilfrid Laurier in Canada. They were a big P&G school. And I got a summer internship in my first sort of year. And in the late 90s, when you're starting your career, the place you went to learn marketing was Procter and Gamble. Like that was the academy place. And that's how it all got started. A little bit of luck, then a little bit of persistence and dedication, and you make things happen. And that kind of started that first chapter of my career. To now get into the career chapters, my first chapter was the CPG careers, these big companies. I lived all over the world. I had the great fortune of living in Singapore, Switzerland, India, like all over the world. I'd always just say yes to things. And this first chapter was all about learning marketing globally in these big consumer packaged goods companies. I think I was 29 or 30 years old, and I became a president at J&J. I ran our biggest division there, our baby care division at J&J. And I thought I'd made it. I was like, yeah, I've made it. I'm young. And then Silicon Valley started to brew. And I was like, holy cow, the world's changing. And I just kind of stopped it all, basically resigned, and then moved out here to the Bay Area and joined my first sort of private equity backed company, which is called Ancestry, which I'm sure you know.
Of course.
And that started my second chapter of my career, this sort of tech in Silicon Valley sort of chapter of my career. We created this entire movement around consumer genetics and DNA testing, and it was all under this insight that if we all knew where we came from, we would realize that we were all much more similar than we are different. And it was this really powerful mission that just exploded that brand and this company as a storytelling platform. And it got huge, right? I don't know if you did the genetic testing and all that, but I definitely did. I found out I'm a little bit Finnish. And it's quite amazing in that the world sort of really embraced this technology because I think we all needed like sort of something that brought us together at that time. It became the number one selling product on Amazon. I mean, it was just huge movement that happened.
Huge. When you joined Ancestry, how young was the company?
It was, I'd say about 15 years old, but entering an entirely new chapter, right? Because it was this sort of legacy kind of different target audience, sort of genealogy-based company, and then we were trying to turn kind of family history and where you come to into this movement in America that really hit the cultural zeitgeist and sort of reinvented the brand, reinvigorated growth, and allowed us to then have a transaction with the company. I learned the power of sort of ownership and wealth creation, and I learned the power of sort of equity versus salary to build your family's future, which is what motivates me. And so I just fell in love with everything Silicon Valley is. I'm now at Chime. We're a big disruptive financial technology company that's trying to show everyday people that there's a better way to bank. I mean, the old banks are definitely not serving the needs of most Americans. And we've had a great run here, and it's been an amazing sort of place to be for the last 4.5 years.
I mean, absolutely amazing, and so much to double click into. Like, I want to go back a little bit to, we're going to touch on a few things. I want to start with what you were doing. You talk about Procter & Gamble, which was the very beginning, how interesting and fascinating to me that you set your sights on something and you were so relentless in making it happen and so smart about even looking at where you went to school and all of this, like how fascinating. And then you made that happen, and what a great way to start your career. With Johnson & Johnson, like you talked about, then around 29, 30, becoming a president of that division, what were some of the things that you learned about growing products and about what it took to grow companies at that level?
At scale, it's a different problem than when you're a bit smaller. And at scale, a couple of things happen. Number one, people can get really comfortable, right? Because you're this big company with a big sort of moat around the business. It's going to be hard to break in. And so one of the biggest things you have to watch at scale is this idea of comfort, right? I talk a lot about sort of, as brands scale, you can get really sort of complacent that you're going to be fine. And the truth is that's not the case. As Silicon Valley started to bloom and direct-to-consumer business started to come up, which is actually what many of your entrepreneurs are doing, we started to see all these new companies all of a sudden start to break down the traditional barriers to entry in CPG businesses, right? Like it used to be impossible to launch a new consumer product, right? Because big companies like P&G, J&J, Unilever, et cetera, had retail distribution, which you had to pay for, and you had to do there was massive barriers to entry to that. There was no real like online shopping, right? So retail is where you went to shop. And then to create brand awareness and to tell people about it, there was TV essentially and radio. And the cost to enter these markets was so high that if you were an entrepreneur trying to like launch a new laundry detergent or a new baby diaper brand or something, it was going to be very hard to penetrate. So I think the biggest thing I learned at scale, because it was right at the precipice of this like direct to consumer revolution, was that you just cannot be satisfied with the status quo, right? You've got to be able to adjust and really not get too comfortable. That's sort of number one. Number two, the thing that's crippling for big companies, which you really have to undo to keep growth going, is eliminate bureaucracy, right? Like I'm very cognizant about, even to this day, where am I, like between me and the kind of most junior person in the org, how many levels are there, you know? Because otherwise information just takes too long to flow both up and down. And it can get very bureaucratic, and there's meetings for meetings and meetings for the meeting for the meeting. And it just gets overly slow. And these small companies are coming in and they can disrupt these large companies when you're not even looking at this point. And so speed of information, speed of decision making becomes really, really important. And then third, you have to lean into what advantages you have at scale. And the biggest advantage you have at scale is you have the ability to really put your muscle behind new innovation, right? So, we've got the R&D at scale. We've got all the best scientists at scale. We've got the relationships with the regulators, and we can really launch things that could be disruptive, and we have to really use that muscle to put all that capital and human talent into innovation and really push that out using your distribution and marketing muscle as much as possible. So a little bit of it is undoing some challenges at scale, and a little bit of it is leaning into the power of scale, which is talent and the ability to kind of go to market with force. And these are things that have been really important for a lot of years in that industry.
That makes so much sense, and it's something that you kind of see when you think about these like legacy companies. How easy it is to get comfortable in that.
Right.
You have so many resources, and it feels like you have everything all together, and it's easy to kind of stay comfortable there. With your entry point in Johnson & Johnson, and then moving into becoming over time, that was a journey right there to get to president of that division. What was that journey like? What had you kind of move stage over stage until you reached that level?
Look, well, I entered J&J already at a pretty senior level. I was running worldwide marketing there, so I had this crazy $4 billion budget. I mean, it was an insane opportunity, which I was so fortunate.
The dream budgets.
Infinity budgets, right? But that doesn't mean you're going to grow, right? As we just talked about. So it was a really amazing experience. And really, for me, it was after running sort of a function, I was missing running a P&L, like actually having the end-to-end ownership of a business, right? Like in any company, in these big companies, they tend to be matrixed organizations. So you have like geographic or divisional P&L ownership, and then you have these horizontal functions that are supporting a lot of these areas. And so for me, it was a natural kind of move. It was like go back to, if I want to like continue to grow at these big companies, I had to go back into P&L ownership after running a function. And that's a very natural career path at a lot of these companies.
That makes so much sense. Okay, and then hearing this rise of what's happening in Silicon Valley, and also just understanding your natural fire, that feels like it's also something that has been innate with you. The fact that you kind of have been this relentless person, you're going to get after it, you're going to go do it, and then you move into this next phase, which obviously Ancestry, was a part of that entry point into that. And now Chime, which, when you look at these like legacy conglomerates compared to, something like Chime, who's a lot younger, but also doing something pretty incredible in the market and just revolutionizing a space. I can see the excitement around that. And I'm curious, what was it about Chime that had you buy in all the way, where you're like, I need to be a part of this? And, you know, to your point, you talked a little bit about, you know, equity, different kind of systems, things that really matter to you personally. Like, what was it that made you say, this is where I want to be, this is where I want to, you know, spend my time?
It's a great question. Well, look, you know, you reach a certain point in your career where you want to use what you're good at for good in the world, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, that really happened to me. Ancestry really showed me the power of when you can create a positive brand platform, you can really create a movement because people want to get behind things that are constructive and positive for our world, you know, and at Ancestry, it was at this, when we had launched the genetic testing and really put that in the world, it was at this moment where America was getting very divided. And we thought, man, like, we can stay above all the politics. This was not a political statement. Doesn't everyone just want to be closer together? Like, isn't being together a good thing? It doesn't matter who you are. And we really leaned into that. And when I, you know, and then I went to Walgreens Boots for 3 or 4 years. It was $100 billion business. I had thousands of people. And I ended up having to lead that business for over 3 years in the UK and the US through COVID, which was this like such a mission driven, powerful moment for me, leading retail pharmacy through what was the craziest time of our generation. I have so many war stories we can talk about on that one as well. But then when I saw Chime, I was like, wow, it started with meeting the founder. We have these amazing co-founders who believe so deeply in our mission of unlocking financial progress for everyday Americans. They, our CEO has this personal story where someone took a chance on him and actually funded his high school education. And he kind of made it just based off the kindness and goodness of someone who took a chance on him and believed in him. And when you hear the authenticity of a founder and why the company was set up, you just get like absorbed by that. You know, there's too many brands and companies in the world that I feel like are just transactional, where the purpose isn't actually guiding the business model. And for our founder, Chris, it was a truly amazing story. So that's number one. Number two was, you know, obviously there has to be, so there has to be mission alignment. That was number one. Number two was that you have to believe that there's business opportunity here, right? Just because a company has a great mission doesn't, that you believe in and that you can relate to. Myself as a first generation immigrant, I was like, yes, I wish my family had Chime. The second thing is there an addressable market here? Can you actually build an economically viable company? And I mean, what an unbelievable addressable market Chime has, right? I mean, there's 200 million people in America that live paycheck to paycheck, which, by the way, does not mean you're poor, right? You can make up to $150,000 in a lot of cities in this country and still not have a lot left in between those 2-week pay cycles. And I saw this unbelievable opportunity. I saw a brand that had begun telling its story, but, you know, it had not quite matured all the way yet. We had this amazing CMO here before me. She's actually almost like a co-founder. She was like the first 5 employees of the company. And her and I just vibed on what this next chapter needed. And I was like, yeah, I think I can be your successor. And we can really take Chime to the next level, go from challenger to leadership brand. And I saw this amazing opportunity to grow it and lots of low-hanging fruit that I knew I could like pick and really ripen, right, the business over time. And then lastly, it was, you know, our culture. We are a company that that really values things like transparency and radical candor, and we look at feedback as sort of a gift. And I look for these companies where you don't have to put on a face. You know, you can be yourself. People see feedback, both constructive and you know, positive, as a gift. And it's really important to me that I work in a place where people can just be them full selves. They can say what they need to say kindly and respectfully, but they can say what they need to say. And I was just absorbed by the people I met. And to this day, it's something I very much care about.
It's so amazing, and it's also so amazing to hear the founder's story as well. And it makes so much sense when you see the content, when you see the cohesiveness across the campaigns, the messaging, the mission. It all makes sense. It's like rooted in something so real, and you can feel that even if you don't have the exact words to kind of put behind it. As someone on the outside looking in, anyone who's kind of seeing the brand, you're like, this feels like there's depth here. There's like real meaning here. So it's so cool to hear it from your lens as well. What else is fascinating as well when you talk about what Chime has been able to accomplish and being the fastest growing, banking service in America right now, which is such a huge statement. When you look at these legacy banks, I think about when I was in elementary, how they were already priming us to be with Bank of America or whatever bank, you know what I mean? And you guys to come in here, what is it, 2012 when the company started, I believe, something like that, or 2014 when it became public, in terms of for consumers. And so I'm like, what incredible strides have been made in such a short period of time for this industry. It's such a testament to your point, to the addressable market, to the mission, the heart, the purpose, and also the team, and when I look at what Chime has been able to do, even bringing superstars like yourself, this is something that I also look at. It seems like it's also part of the culture, bringing superstars. When you have a mission that big, you got to cultivate and also bring in superstars. So for you, being at the helm of marketing and growth for Chime, I'd be fascinated to understand, what that looks like in terms of bringing other superstars into your team. And how do you navigate some of the egos? I think of teams sometimes as like sports teams, and you have these superstars who kind of know what they can bring to the table, but it's still about the collective. So how do you navigate that, and kind of what's your philosophy around that?
Well, you probably know this as well as anyone. No one does this alone, and
Yes.
we're really proud of it. We're opening more accounts than anyone in America now, more than Bank of America, Chase, Wells Fargo. It's a pretty amazing place to be, but it comes down to the team around you. And
Yeah.
I'm really fortunate. I've been able to recruit what I think, I might be biased, but is the best marketing leadership team in the country. And we've got real superstars. All three of my direct reports are former CMOs in their own right.
I saw that. That's why my question. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, and it's
Games over here.
yeah, exactly. And the key is like, as a leader, it's really for like all of my teammates can do their job better than I could. Right? We've got a head of brand and creative that, runs circles around me and what he does. Our head of growth marketing was, the guy who brought Dollar Shave Club to the world before it got sold to Unilever.
Amazing.
My head of product marketing is this amazing leader who has scaled companies, was the GoPro marketing leader when it was having its heyday. And I've got a chief of staff who's this amazing woman who's just done so much in the industry with companies like Twitter, et cetera. So I've been able to assemble a team of people who are all better at their jobs than me. That's the first thing. And I think that's where you've got to start. The second thing is also that we've also got ambidextrous leaders. So the truth is each of them could probably do each other's jobs, And that's really important to me because you don't want a team of people who just kind of stay in their lane and it's never shall lanes cross, And so when we have leadership meetings, they're animated, they're debates, right? They're like people challenging each other. And that's really important to me because I think that natural tension and challenge is what really makes things better. Like none of us have all the ideas. And when we get pushed, I think those ideas get better and more formed and more powerful. And then lastly, when you have a team like this, you have to invest in the team. Great teams and culture don't happen by accident. So I'm pretty religious about, for the last 4.5 years that I've been here, we've been taking my leadership team off-site every quarter for 2 days. I just shut it all down. We're going off-site for 2 days. And we actually hire a coach. And someone comes in, and I'm a huge fan of this book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And it really starts with this idea of trust and vulnerability-based trust. If you can have vulnerability in your team, I think you can get through anything, good days, bad days, if it's truly authentic and vulnerable. So we spend time, we know how each other grew up. We know the biggest challenges in our lives. My team knows the darkest moments of my life growing up, with my mom and my dad, and every family has its, things, right? And so we know that about each other. And when you can develop that kind of depth of relationship and then work towards a common goal and you focus on that every quarter for 4 years, right? It's a really powerful way to keep a team gelled together and running down the same path to climb the right same mountain, right? And it's a really important part of how I lead is bringing together superstars, but then really cultivating it as a team, not as a group of individuals. And that's something that's really important to me.
It's so, so, so powerful what you just said, and that whole, kind of digging into the humans that are all building this mission together. I love that idea of these offsites where it's not only about, strategy and what are we doing, but also like digging into getting to know each other really, really well. Because at the end of the
Right.
day, it's a collective of humans that are bringing this to life. So I think that's pretty phenomenal. So fascinating. One other question on just, I would love to hear a little bit more on your leadership philosophy and style. Like, what does, when you're looking at targets, whether if it's quarterly or for the year, how do you think about leading your team? Obviously, understanding some of the things that you mentioned about offsites or, how you think about challenging each other and how you even think about the type of team members that you bring in. But what else is really important to you when there's, really big targets to help get your team, there?
Well, a couple of things. If you ask my team, probably the most annoying thing about working with me is that my team will tell you that I have a bit of a reality distortion field, right? Like I'll be like, hey, I'll just dream up something and be like, we can do that. And there's just like almost like this idea of manifesting realities that people didn't even think was possible. But when you're doing hard things and you are scaling in an industry that is being so not available to challenger brands like Chime, you have to be able to dream big and be able to articulate that and get people to believe they can do impossible things. And that is hard, right? Because I'll be relentless on it, right? I'll be like, we got to do that by this date. And, we'll pull off things that I don't even think we thought were possible. But to make that work, I'll go to my second thing, which is then as a leader, you can't just be like at the top of the mountain yelling orders. You have to be willing to chew glass yourself, right? You have to be willing to get in the trenches, get deep, work the hours, right? You can't just be in an ivory tower shouting orders, right? If you're going to set distorted reality sort of mountains to climb for your team, you then have to be willing to go on the climb. You have to be willing to do the hard things. Like I always talk about, like I said, chewing glass is something, this grit and this like willingness to take pain has to be starting from the leader first. And my leaders have to exemplify that as well. So I look for that trait in people who are willing to work through hard things and resilience. And then the third thing that we look for, and that is really key to my leadership style, is I used this word earlier called radical candor, which is a well-known concept. And essentially it's having high directness with high empathy. And it's this idea that, so many companies and teams are thinking something, but they don't say it. And when it gets left unsaid, you can't do anything about it. I can only manage what I know, right? And so it's this idea of we have this saying on our leadership team, we say, just say the thing, And so we have these sort of norms that we follow. And it's a really important concept to me that, I'll give people feedback, right? Like after a meeting, I'll pull them aside and be like, hey, that was really good. You could do this. I mean, everyone knows that. Sometimes I'll hold people, hey, can you stay back for a second? It's immediate feedback. It's constant. I'm not a big believer in these like ceremonies of mid-year and year ends. They're fine. You need to do them, but you shouldn't wait till then. Nothing there by that point should be a surprise. So we have this continuous feedback loop that I really try to instill. So between climbing these mountains that are totally devoid of reality, being willing to chew glass and really do the hard things, and then be able to say things to be like being able to give feedback, which helps people grow. It's a pretty we're all in, and it's not for everyone, but it's I think what allows teams to achieve greatness.
I love it. I love it so much. And then what would you say like keeps you up at night as, the chief growth officer with all the, ambition, everything that you all are building over there? Like, what is it that keeps you up at night?
Yeah, look, it's another thing that makes it hard to work for me sometimes because, I'm a first generation immigrant.
Yep.
We had nothing my whole life. I literally wake up every day. Like I wake up at home, I'm like, how do I live here? And it's like it could all just be taken away from me. I have this constant fear that
Mhm.
everything I've done could just be taken away from me. And I don't know. I just think it's going to be in me forever. And obviously, I'm getting more comfortable with who I
Yeah.
am, and the imposter syndrome slowly starts to wither away, but it's never going to go away fully. And so I wake up every day thinking, what are we not doing right now? Like, where are our vulnerabilities? And I think learned a lot. Part of it's my DNA and being a first generation immigrant. Part of it's working the first half of my career in these legacy companies that I've seen just get disrupted, right?
Mhm.
Over and over again. And I'm just like we cannot rest. I'll never forget. We opened an office in San Francisco a few years ago. This beautiful office in the FIDI, which was sort of like enough to. We had a lot of growth ambitions, and we knew we needed more space, so we opened this office. And I'll never forget. I walked in the first day when we had just opened it, and I looked at our founder and I said, "I'm really worried about this." He goes, "Why?" He's like, "I feel like people will think, well, we've made it, you know."
Mm.
And that's the thing that worries me the most is our team feeling overly comfortable,
Wow.
like we've made it. And I just think you can never truly feel that way. You can be proud, you can celebrate,
Yeah.
but you can't feel like you've made it because the second you get there, someone's gonna take your lunch, and you have to be really careful.
Totally. And that's something that you've also experienced having been at these like massive companies, seen it.
100%.
And now it's like it's in you. You live it, which is so amazing. Okay, I want to jump into some of the tactical kind
Let's
of
do it.
conversations around economics of growing a sustainable business.
Yeah.
What does it take? What are people not thinking about? How should young founders, entrepreneurs who have products, how should they be thinking about the economics? And I think, with something like 60 Day Hustle or general founders that, I get to speak to quite often, I think a lot of times it's easy to believe so much in your mission and in your purpose and in your product. But if the economics are not solid underneath it, doesn't mean you're going to grow. So,
Right.
so I'd love to hear from you. What do you think is important for founders to know, and how should they be thinking about sustainable growth?
Yeah, let's geek out a little bit on this.
Yes,
This will be fun, and let's just be as practical as possible, because
do
it's
it.
probably what people need in this world. You know, the first thing, and this is going to sound simple, but it's sort of, do you know who you're building for? Who are you creating your product for? And the first thing you have to check is there product market fit? And I'll get to economics in a second,
Yep.
but you have to first and foremost understand, is the thing you've invented, the thing you're putting out in the world, the product you've created, is it going to truly be differentiated and create sort of the experience that you want for whoever your target audience is? A lot of people sort of go into starting to sell the product really hard before they even know if there's product market fit. And one thing in software businesses, and you learn in businesses that are, pixels versus hard goods, is that you learn lots of beta tests, lots of alpha tests. You're constantly optimizing the code and the product until it's honed, and then you scale. We actually do alpha, beta, then we do general availability. We call that a GA. And I think that's true for any business. Have you perfected the recipe? Have you the product experience, when you put that skincare cream on, is it giving you the feel that you want? And have you obsessed over getting that feedback early and often from your consumer and really dialed in the product? I think that's the very first thing, because you could have all the ideas in the world to sort of scale, and even if your go-to-market strategy is great, eventually you're not going to get repeat customers. You're not going to get sort of a regeneration of the business. You might sell it the first time, but it's not going to happen the second time. At P&G, we used to call this the second moment of truth. The first moment of truth was when people choose your product, which you can do with flashy marketing, good packaging. But the
Totally.
second moment of truth was, did it actually do the thing you said? And did it actually work better than other products? And you've got to get that second moment of truth really dialed in so that people, for sure that it's delivering the promise. Once you have that, you can move on to sort of thinking about all the economics of it, and in a few ways. The first thing that people don't think a lot about is, what is the customer acquisition cost of my product, right? And I'll just use simple math. Let's say you were making I don't know, a food product. Let's just say a drink of some sort, because I know you guys have lots of food entrepreneurs on your business that I met, some really cool entrepreneurs and products. Let's say you're launching a drink. Let's just call it an energy drink, okay? Very crowded space, but let's say you've nailed the product, right? The product market fit is clear. You're like, you've talked to consumers, they like it better than Monster and Celsius. There's some unique thing about it that people love. Let's say you've nailed that. The next question is, just because you've nailed it doesn't mean your acquisition economics are going to be okay. So let's say it starts costing you start running some tests on Meta or Google or various platforms. Let's say you start to want to acquire people to come to your website and try it out. If it's costing you $5 to acquire a customer, meaning you're paying $2 for a click, they come to your website, and now the conversion rate, not everyone's going to convert, right? So by the time you get your conversion rates, your net acquisition cost between click and conversion is $5, but your product cost you $6 to make because you added all these funky ingredients to make it amazing. Well, now you're losing $1 in every transaction, and you haven't even taken fulfillment costs in. So the next thing people got to do before you scale big time is go, can I get those customer acquisition costs to a place where I can make enough margin on my business that I can actually fuel growth, right? Because as you know, as a business owner, margin is the fuel, the gross margin, right? The cost the price you sell it at minus the cost you make it at is how you fuel. You use those dollars then to fund acquisition and marketing costs. Those marketing costs then have to come in at a price where you don't lose money on the transaction. I know it sounds obvious, but too many entrepreneurs start the acquisition engine without doing it at a small scale, testing, learning, optimizing their acquisition costs, right? Maybe this creative unit will have a higher click-through rate, which will lower my acquisition costs. Or maybe the creative is fine and it's driving click-throughs, but my whole onboarding, getting my payment too hard. I'm making, I don't understand what the product is being sold when I click the ad. So you've got to optimize what we call that funnel perfectly, right, before you go to scale. So kind of like you want your product right, you want your acquisition costs right as well. And you've got to do all these things in sort of a smaller level before you sort of scale and sort of lose your shirt and you realize it too late. So there's that acquisition cost side of it, which is really important. And then the last thing is, your organic strategy. So a lot of people think about sort of product and paid acquisition, right? Because Google, Meta, TikTok, you can run paid ads and make that happen. But let's say you've got those right. The third leg of great businesses is they have organic growth, not just paid growth. And organic growth is things like, hey, when you're launching a product, do you have a referral program, right? If you have such a great product, can you turn a big part, by the way, Chime, 50% of our acquisitions come from organic growth. They don't come from paid growth. They come from people joining Chime, and then they refer other members and get a referral bonus. That referral bonus is cheaper than any paid ad I could do, and it's actually more effective because it's coming from a friend, not from a brand. So do people have organic growth strategies? So if I'm launching this energy drink, do I have a CRM database of everyone who's bought it? And can I run a referral program quickly to them and say, hey, I'll give you $5 for every, I'm just making up that number, for every person you refer. Do I have a social media strategy where I get attention and that attention can turn into clicks to my website? Is my social media shoppable commerce, right? So there's these sort of like organic social, organic growth strategies like referrals and things like that. That is the third leg of a stool that I think a lot of people don't think about. So have a great product, win that second moment of truth, make sure you've dialed in your end-to-end acquisition costs and that it's leaving you with enough gross margin or EBITDA to really run the business and continue to drive growth, because if you don't have enough money left over, you can't reinvest in the business. And then third, do you have organic growth levers to really scale the business even without paid marketing so that you're not entirely reliant on the ad platforms to grow?
Amazing. Dropping all the gems, all the gems. Okay, so I have a question for you. How do you think about, for founders that are hearing this, and this is such great advice, how should they be thinking about what is success versus not in terms of, the costs. Understanding, yes, you have to have healthy margins and you need to protect all of that. But when you kind of look at, I'm spending this to acquire a customer and I'm new, but I know that my lifetime value is going to mean X, what's worth it? How do you kind of look at these kind of metrics?
I like it. So we're really geeking out now. I like it.
Yes.
So I think a lot of people look at early days, look at just the P&L. Like, here's my revenue. Here's like my sales. Here's my cost. Here's my profit or loss, which is good. You need to keep an eye on that. But what really matters in the early days is the unit economics. So on every unit I sell, am I making enough margin there? And that's kind of where I was going with that second point.
Yep.
It's often overlooked, right? Like any entrepreneur that I'm looking at or investing in, because I do a lot of investing myself, it's sort of like, do I think that this person knows their unit economics inside out? Anyone can read a P&L and say, this is my revenue, this is my cost, this is my profit. But
can you break down unit economics for those watching?
Pardon me?
Can you break down unit economics for those
Unit
watching?
economics are essentially my cost of producing a product versus my cost of acquiring a customer for the product, right? It's that, in the simplest terms, that's what it is. And it's not at the macro level, it's at the unit level. So for every unit of a drink I sell, right, an energy drink I sell, what is my cost to acquire that customer? And if it's not going to work, it's not going to scale. Like, you can't scale negative unit economics, right? Like, that's the recipe for bankruptcy. So that's sort of unit economics. Great. Now, you made a really good point about lifetime value. So the next element, once you've nailed that of unit economics, is you can improve your unit economics by increasing the lifetime value of a customer. And what I mean by that is it doesn't become just about that first purchase you make. It then becomes about the recurring revenue you get from that customer after that first acquisition. So think about this. If you can acquire someone for $5, they come and use your product, and then you don't have to reacquire them, but they keep adding revenue to you sort of automatically for the next 2 years. And that could be, maybe the energy drink is a subscription service and you get, 10 drinks a month shipped, and you have this sticky retention business of of a subscription business that keeps going on, right? Now that $5 doesn't just generate the unit economics of one purchase, it generates the unit economics of a year of recurring purchases. And now that $5 just got you $100, not just $5 got you like $6, if you know what I mean. So the real durable businesses have recurring revenue. So you acquire once and you build recurring revenue, and then you look at like the 1 year, 2 year lifetime value of that customer that you acquired. Let's say it's $100 over a year. Now you have, for $5, $100, you have a 20 to 1 LTV to CAC, right? 100 to $5. So my LTV is 100, my customer acquisition cost $5. I have a 20 to 1 LTV to CAC ratio, which is obviously made up and crazy. If you had that, I'll invest in your business. But that is sort of the way that you sort of scale businesses for real. So first, get those unit economics right. Don't get ahead of yourself. And then figure out how you turn that acquisition cost into a year of recurring revenue without you having to reacquire every time. The problem with a lot of these sort of CPG businesses, in my opinion, is that you have to reacquire at every purchase occasion, right? So every time I need a new energy drink, I have to reacquire a customer again because there's so many purchase occasions in a year. How do you take them out of the market and just stick them to you as long as possible? And that's really the key to a truly durable business over time, is low CAC, good unit economics, and recurring revenue that gives you lifetime value.
Come on with the masterclass.
Let's
All
go.
right, that's so good. Okay, so you kind of broke down a little bit. You gave this arbitrary number of like 20 to 1, and of course that's just like a fluffy number. And yes, we'll all invest if the company's doing that well. But what is a good baseline for someone to be kind of? If I know that companies vary, but I'm just curious if there's like a baseline that people should be thinking of.
Companies vary, and I could get really geeky here with you, but which I won't. But look, in businesses that I look at, either investing in or participate, companies that I lead or participate in, look, a 3 or a 4 to 1 LTV to CAC is a world-class LTV to CAC. Like, if you can get 3 times to 4 times the revenue from every dollar you spend to acquire, you're going to have enough margin room to then take that money and keep acquiring more customers. If you have anything much lower than that, it's tough. Now, of course, a lot of this depends on the dollar margin of a product, what your balance sheet looks like. I'm not going to get into all of that. But in simple terms, if you can get to a 3 or 4 to 1 LTV to CAC, you're in very good territory as a company or a business.
Amazing. Amazing. Okay, so now for companies that are, that are just starting out, maybe it's a solo founder doing it on their own. Maybe they start, kind of getting their first team members, 1, 2 people. What do you think is most important when they're thinking about marketing and all of these economics that we're talking about? Where should they be putting their focus first? Where should they be obsessing?
Got it. So let's say they've got their sort of their product dialed in and they know they've got a winner on their hands and they're moving to sort of the marketing phase. Where they should be obsessing is like not trying to scale all the ad platforms at once, right? Like you've got to think, and I think the other thing that happens is people start thinking about like brand awareness right away, and it's tough. Like how do you break through with real brand awareness right away? So the way I like to think about it is the next place you go is you go to some of these ad platforms and you test, you like, let's take a Facebook or an Instagram or a Pinterest and take one and dial it in, right? Like, because to really get these algorithms, these paid algorithms working for you, you need so many things to go right. You need like the ad unit, the actual creative that you're using on this, just to have like what we call thumb stopping power, right? Or scroll stopping power. Like people actually have to stop on your ad for a second, right? And then not only do they need to stop, they need to click. And then they need to click and land on some kind of a web page of yours, right? Then you've got to make sure that that web page, if it drives clicks, it actually converts people to a purchase. So doing that at 5 ad platforms at the same time, or the key is focus. It's like, I know everyone wants to go fast, and it's like, no, like the time, we have a saying in marketing at Chime, which is go slow to go fast.
Yes.
And this is a time to go slow to go fast. Dial in the product, then dial in your acquisition, find a platform that works. If it's not working, move to the next one, but don't try to scale 5 platforms at once. And then, like I said, concurrently, build your social media and organic growth engine, right? Because, if you can really get that scaling and you need less emphasis on paid, your CAC gets lower, right? So focus on one platform at a time, dial it in, optimize that purchase funnel as much as you can, and then move into, and in parallel, try to build some organic growth and, really get that engine going as well.
Amazing. This is so juicy. It's so good. And I'm so excited for people to be able to get this download. It's so actionable. And so, obviously you have not only been a part with Chime and, with the team in 60-Day Hustle and everything we're doing, but you also have been a guest judge, and you have sat there and you have watched the contestants' campaigns and you've given them feedback, and you've seen these founders while they're in this kind of growth mode as well. Quickly, when you look at, aside from the economics, which we've definitely you've done such a fantastic job diving into, when you look at a founder, when you think about, I don't want to invest in this, or I want to be a part of this person's growth journey, like what are the things that you look at?
Yeah, so a few things, and it's no surprise to me some of the things I've mentioned. The first thing is sort of pain tolerance, like
yes, come on now.
To like, I'm just gonna say it again, chew glass, like the resilience and the pain tolerance you need to start a business or to scale a business is so high. Like I would not invest in someone optimizing for comfort. I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm not making a judgment call. I'm just saying for me to invest, I want someone who's going to be like, just demonstrated to me that they have deep pain tolerance and almost seek pain, these kind of people, I can't describe it. These people you just know.
I know.
Like, give it to me hard. Like, I just want it. Like, I want a really tough go at this, So that's number one. You cannot teach that, in my opinion. I think that comes from life experiences, and it's there. That's by far number one. And by the way, the reason I say that also is like in these early days, you don't really know that much. The only thing you can assess is the founder, right? And so first and foremost, you're investing in the founder.
Yep.
The second thing then is, like I said, do you know your numbers? Like, do you know your numbers inside out, left, backwards? Like if I can do analysis on your business in 30 minutes that you don't know inside and out by the time you get in front of like a judge or me or an investor, I just can't invest. Like someone has to have mastery of their math, right? Building a brand is math and magic, and that math part really matters.
I love that. That's such a moment. I'm like,
It's
that's a math
really important.
so real.
Absolutely. And then the third thing I really look at is just the vision, the dream. Like,
Yeah.
are they thinking big, or are they thinking like, you know what, like if I can get distribution and in my local grocery stores, I'm big, so I'm good. But I'm like, no, but if you're an investor, you want outsized returns, right? And so for me personally, I'm going to look for things that are going to give outsized returns with a dream that is, maybe hard to achieve, but has a lot of TAM or a lot of potential. And you've got to look at that, because a great idea in a small market is still going to be a small business. So you have to be really careful with that.
Amazing. I love it. I feel like we bird's eyed, we zoomed in, we went real deep with the numbers. Like, it has been such a phenomenal conversation. I want to zoom back out into your mindset of, as a CMO, as a growth leader, at Chime, and just as you think about growth, right? My question is around entertainment. You guys have really done such a phenomenal job at going from, being this young company that then has grown and is taking over this industry, and now becoming a culture brand. And you really play in entertainment, I would say. I mean, obviously you
Yeah.
guys are partners with us on 60 Day Hustle, which, is a TV show on a main streamer, and there's all sorts of things around entertainment. I'm curious how important entertainment is for you as you look at your strategy of reaching people, of kind of staying relevant in conversation and culture. How important is that for you?
Look, it's where it's at. People, the honest truth is, people hate ads. They hate like looking at advertising. I mean, it works because it makes people aware of who you are and what you do, but that's not what creates connection, right?
Yeah.
Brands today have to be let me start one step back. The currency for today, and the hardest thing to get today, is attention. Attention is sort of the new CAC, right? In many ways. And the only way you get attention is through entertainment. Like, you have to entertain to get attention. Otherwise you get skipped. You just get passed. And so brands in many ways now are basically entertainment platforms. They're streaming platforms. I talk to our brand team as if I talk to them as like, you guys are editors of like a weekly magazine back in the day, or you're the content head of a streaming platform, and your job is to actually create hits, constant hits, right? And that's essentially the way we think about it. So partnering with properties like yours, which again, congratulations on all the success, is a huge part of that's one part of entertainment where you embed into pre-distributed properties where you feel like there's a brand alignment. So that's one way to do it. The second thing is original programming. So we are deep in Hollywood right now, piloting some shows. It was a huge part of how we built the Ancestry brand. I mean, we had shows that were nominated for Emmys. Like, it's a pretty amazing way to build a brand. And so I deeply believe in original programming that then gets distributed. So we have a couple of shows in pilot right now. And then the third one is really in social media. Like, where's attention? It's in the streaming platforms, and it's in social. And so how do you think about your own social media presence as appointment viewing and entertainment, right? So we have shows, we have this in-house studio, we call it In the Green Studios, and we have shows like Mama, I Made It, Ballin' on a Budget. It's cool, right? And we take like celebs and we put them with their mom, and we talk about their progress stories, and we launch a new episode, right? So in many ways, we have an own channel with the streaming, and we treat it just like we're like a network, putting out a new show. So you've got to think about entertainment is the key, I think, to drive relevance in brand building and to get attention. Don't get me wrong, TV and all of this stuff, it still plays a role, but it's much more transactional. But to get relevance, connection, and to truly get a deep understanding of your brand story, entertainment is where it's at, and that's why it's growing so much as an industry.
Amazing. Well, Vineet, I have to say this has been Such an amazing conversation. I'm so grateful that we had this time together to talk through all of this. You are a wealth of knowledge, and I really appreciate you sharing that. This conversation together, but I know the impact that it'll have on so many founders who have a dream, who have a mission, who have that resilience and that fire in them, but maybe don't have the knowledge of how they should be thinking about the unit economics and all of that. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. It means so much. And yeah, very, very, very excited for all that you guys are doing at Chime and all that we're doing together. And yeah, thank you so much for this awesome conversation. I can guarantee there will be many more conversations, and we'll find other ways to share a lot of this knowledge, because there's so much in you that entrepreneurs can really learn from. So thanks so much.
Let's do it, Michelle. We'll keep doing this together, and thanks for all your partnership with Chime. You guys have been a real pleasure to work with. I think you truly understand brand integration in a way that is authentic and real, and I can't wait for all the goodness that's still to come in your own reality distortion of your business.
I love it. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Vineet.